Hello, everybody. This is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious on United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And hopefully it's beautiful there today as, all of the South, as I'm from Texas, is all nice and cold. Uh, but hopefully New Orleans is beautiful as it always has kind of a beautiful state of mind in ways if you've ever been there. As I ramble, I also wanted to tell you that this show, Becoming Quantum Conscious, is also available on Roku, X, Facebook, YouTube, and the UPRN website. And that would be UPRN Talk Radio uh, and also other internet platforms all around the world. I'm trying to juggle my computer here as I talk. And wow, what a day for me. You ever have a day that you have nobody at home and you're free to write, dance, listen to music, pet the cats? It's just an introvert's paradise. And, since cats are introverted as well, we're all in harmony here and all of this beauty. So we are coming out with this introvert's paradise today for the last couple of days with the cold weather here in Austin, Texas. I love it. It's our 1 week of winter, I think. Then we'll go back to something warmer. Who knows? It's all fun, but it's all in the beginning of 2025. And, it's really strange, but from what I'm picking up and gathering, most people are anticipating this year with more dread or more hope, but there is a lot of anticipation. And, I kind of saw that coming way back when I invited Maiaya Vale on the show to help bring in some clarity because I really believe that the first 12 days of the year are crucial in us getting a direction, an internal direction, maybe a direction to point our boat in some way, set the oars and rudders and sails and get going. So this internal and the physical come together and we take off. And hopefully you're not going into some mundane direction, but you are going, well, what the heck? I am going to live this life in a huge way. 2025 is a year I am going to seize the day, baby. So that's what I hope today will give you is a little more guidance and how to seize your year and get it going. And I'm going to bring on our guest, Maiaya Vale. Hi, Maiaya. How are you doing?
Hello.
It's good to see
I'm
you.
doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Maiaya is a dedicated astrologer in a lot of various streams of astrology. And so we're going to get a full gamut here. Uh, you're just from my observations, you are a very curious and active person, doing a lot of things all the time. Am I picking that up correctly?
That's very intuitively correct.
Well, I love curious people, and I think the world loves curious people who are always in an ongoing discipline or ongoing curiosity about how they can live life in a bigger way. And of course, astrology is a very complex and yet I don't think is there anything simple about astrology? I always see it as complexity upon complexity, like going into the realm of Metatron or something, wheels within wheels type of thing. So um, I'm talking too much. So I'll just say, Maya, How do you see 2025 kind of launching?
Well, 2025, yes, it's astrology is very complex. It's like layers and layers of the onion. Whenever we do anyone's natal chart, there's always more to it than just that one reading. It's a lifelong study. So I always consider myself a student to the lifelong study of astrology, as it's quite ancient. It's gone back to many, many cultures throughout time and has withstood the test of time. So, 2025 is pretty significant. Now, I do like to say that there is a tendency in the astrological realm for people to be like, this new moon is the greatest new moon. This full moon is going to be like, the one of the year, this eclipse, because they
Welcome,
all
welcome to
shoot, people
Facebook.
get excited. Yeah, yeah, exactly. People I think are excited with new age and this higher consciousness, and they bring a lot of that excitement to it, which is nice. Um, However, with that said, certain moons and eclipses impact other people a little bit more so than others based upon the certain elements they have or placements that they have. So, if someone doesn't feel a specific eclipse as much or full moon, it might be because it's not aspecting them as closely as another full moon or eclipse would. So that's just, a brief underlying of the energies when it comes to how they influence us. However, if you've ever heard of Hancock, he talks a lot about the yugas in Hinduism, and there is speculation that 2025 is kind of like the end of this Kali Yuga cycle, which is one of the densest, heaviest cycles of the yugas. So, with
So
that
it's one
said,
of the when you say the densest, heaviest cycles of the Yugos, does that mean like this particular 2000 Yugo is like a humdinger of density, or is it just like the density that's coming in at the end? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like it's at the end. Yes, yes, I know what you're saying. It's at the very end, so we're actually going to be climbing out of it. So, which is great. However, it takes a couple hundred years for us to really feel, you know, pushed onward into that next level of like higher consciousness. Right now, at the end of the yuga is, what you do see is a lot of changes in leadership or new culture arise, civilizations, certain things ending, new ones beginning and transforming. So, you know, on top of that, we have four planets moving into new signs, and these are actually some of the slower moving planets. Like Pluto has been a big talk in the astrological community, of course, because it's moved into Aquarius, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus. And this is for all of them to be moving within 1 year is pretty significant and very, very rare. So we're on kind of this brink of a new reality, so to speak.
And those are all the planets from the outer realms, with with the exception of Chiron, if you consider Chiron a part of it. But all of these big planets on the outer realms are having these big changes. Uh, is that a concept worth exploring?
Yes. So, for example, I really do want to focus on some of the spiritual and psychological underpinnings that these shifts can have on our individual lives and how to navigate that on a soul level. Because there is a lot of mundane astrology out there that talks about world events and so on and so forth. Um, However, we have, like, for instance, Pluto moving into Aquarius, and the last time that happened was 250 years ago, which was during the American and French Revolution. So we could be seeing similar themes play out in different ways um, during this time as well. Neptune is a 14-year cycle. So on an individual level, we're going to be seeing a new 14-year cycle for us. Uranus is going to be shifting signs, so that's going to be a new 7-year cycle for us. And there's a lot of smaller, with the eclipses changing. So there's a lot of movement this year. There's a lot of mutable energy, and it's important for us to be flexible. There's a lot of water the first half of the year. Water is water and fire is going to be the big thing because we have Neptune moving into Aries between March and October. It was originally in Pisces the last 14 years. So it's moving into Aries, March and October. We have Saturn, which was in Pisces for 2.5 years, moving into Aries in May. And the Neptune and Saturn is they're gonna a little bit go indirect and then direct again. So we're kind of getting a little bit of a preview of these fire energies that are going to be more stable coming in 2026. And then Uranus is going to be moving into Gemini July 7th and Jupiter into Cancer June 9th. And Pluto's officially here in Aquarius over the next 20 years. So there's, quite a few new cycles that are happening for all of us. There's many of us on an individual level that our lives are going to look completely different 6 months from now, if not a year from now. On an internal level, and also on an external level. And of course, that takes into consideration on a collective level as well.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating when you brought up, the 250-year cycle, and of course, the last 250, 100 years ago, we had the American Revolution. And it doesn't mean that we're going to have a revolution in, fighting and guns and stuff. Lord knows we got enough of them. And everybody's ready to use them at some point. But it could be just a huge cultural change. But it will be directed by something of Aquarian influence, if I'm uh, correct, as
Mhm.
opposed to the Piscean denser aspects, which directs you to picking up a gun and fighting. So, you know, to me, it might be something nonviolent because that would be a characteristic of Aquarius: creativity, openness, that type of stuff. Any thoughts?
Yes, I see. Yeah, so Aquarius is very eccentric, very original and creative, humanitarian focused. And when Pluto moves into there, Pluto's like a death and rebirth. It's from, you think of a pendulum, you swing a pendulum this way, it goes into a new sign, and it's going to create huge ripples in whatever sign that it's in when it's in its cycle for a new cycle. And so, when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we can see, of course, as we've been seeing, transformation when it comes to technology, the internet. When it comes to these cycles of the revolution, it can be a different kind of revolution. It could be a humanitarian revolution. There's definitely pros and cons to each sign and to each planet. There is positive, higher octaves of the manifestation, and there's a little bit lower, more denser, unhealthy manifestations of the sign and the planets, and most likely we'll see both of those manifest.
Indeed, and we have the chat opened up with Ashra Healing and Wellness saying, "I love astrology with Maiaya." Welcome, Ashra. And if you have questions for
Thank you.
Maiaya, please put them on the chat. And if you see them come up, Maiaya, and you want to say hi, please do. And you want to address the question, even better. Um, so if we're having this big change with the Pluto 250-year event, would some of the density of the old regime be stronger and more dense as a result? Like a kind of a oppositional uh, reaction? Does that make sense?
I kind of know what you're saying. I would think with it's definitely going to be different because Aquarius is eccentric. So it's definitely going to be something that we haven't seen before. Also, with the other planets moving into some of the fire signs this year for a little bit and then officially in 2026, if you think of the transition from these generational planets being in water, moving into fire, and the alchemy that comes with that when water meets fire, there's a lot of steaminess. There's a lot of, you could think of it as this spiritual transition that's can be a little bit ethereal. And the positive manifestations of fire signs gives a lot of motivation and drive and action and passion, um, and willpower on a soul level, on a collective level, and more of the denser manifestations of some of the planets moving into the fire signs while Pluto is in Aquarius can be kind of, conflict or aggression or heat even because Mars influences those fire signs, so heat and cutting and severing. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think any of us really know how it's going to play out. There's going to be themes on more of our local level, you know, seeing people have forest fires in certain parts of the country, water and fire fire underwater, um, volcanoes and stuff like that, things that we've already truly been seeing and experiencing. I think the important part is to look at what we can do and what we can handle because there's not a lot of earth activity going on. So it can be hard for some of us to find stability with a lot of these changes that are coming about and that are happening. So for the first half of the year, with a lot of water that we have going on, this can be an opportunity for like spiritual baptism, being rebirthed anew, cleansing, washing away of anything that doesn't serve us anymore. And if you try and cling to whatever is trying to be washed away divinely in your life, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time. There's going to be more of an emotional crisis type of feeling in your life or on a collective level. And when these things are getting washed away and getting cleared in 2025, collectively and individually, it's really important for us to find our center. If you think of the waters, I think of the cosmic waters, the oceans, the mother, and finding that spiritual faith that you have inside of yourself, the calling of your soulful truth and staying true to that and not getting caught up in some of the chaos that's ending with this Kali Yuga cycle. And
I,
it's going to be inspiring for people to start new things. And it's just important for us to find that internal compass throughout it
that,
all.
that's some really great wisdom there. And I just want to rephrase it because I think it's really profound in just saying, listen up, folks, that your spiritual center should be something that you should trust
Mm.
to be your anchor, so to speak. And whatever's happening in this year, it's change, it's going to be chaotic, it's going to be unexpected. And we've been facing a lot of that in the last uh, few years. I'd say the last 12, since 2012. And something with that pulling and having faith in yourself and being your center, I think, is a great strength builder that helps change the collective unconscious as opposed to just being reactionary and setting yourself up to kind of being a victimization of the times. Like, oh my
Mm.
God, this is going to be horrible. What will I do? Everything's, you know, going to all fall apart because it looks like it is. But what you're saying is, no, this is a time to get strong in yourself, have faith in yourself. Um, that just sounds wonderful.
That's
Thank you for,
beautifully said. I love the way that you phrased it too.
yeah, yeah, it's so big for right now. And, you know, we're just getting hit a lot of different ways. And I just want to tell everybody that you are listening to Maiaya Vale, and you can find out more about Maiaya and also about classes, individual sessions, and such as this at www.astrologywithmaya, that'd be MAIA.com. So you can check her out. Um, I love her work on Facebook because she always has a weekly astrological reading. So Maiaya Vale, and that would be MAIAYA. Did I get that right?
That's
Maiaya.
correct.
Woo! It's such a beautiful name, and I've never heard anybody have that name. So it's totally unique, as you are. You know, a lot of people have been talking about that Martian energy or Mars energy is kind of in a transition phase as well. And that, we have had that happening it's on a decline since November, but it's still, Martian energy is very prevalent these days. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, that's very correct with a lot of the ET stuff that's happening. That's part of the Pluto and Aquarius as well. Um,
Thanks,
did
Phyllis.
you want to read the comment?
Do you have a comment about that?
Entire city has been without water for 3 days, maybe a few more days. Very symbolic. Yeah, the water is going to be very, prominent the first couple months of 2025, and as well as the fire that's coming around the corner as well, just symbolically or internally. So, yeah, it's going to manifest in people's lives in different ways for sure.
Indeed. So going back to Mars.
Yes, the Martian impulse. So that's a little bit a part of Pluto and Aquarius. A lot of this eccentric, disclosure coming out with extraterrestrials, and if you think of some of the political figures that are in the spotlight, really highlighting this and all the drone stuff that's going on. I don't know if you study any of Rudolf Steiner's work, but I'm a big fan of his work,
Hmm.
and Gigi Young as well. She really Rudolf Steiner?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. But keep
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah. So he talks a little bit about the higher mercur I'm see if I can say it right.
Higher mercurial realms.
Go ahead.
Higher mercurial realms.
Yes, the higher mercurial realm.
Yes. And so, what does Rudolph say about that?
Yes. So there's this fallen Martian impulse that is happening and playing out in our world, and then there's this fallen Venusian impulse that's happening and playing out in our world. And Steiner talks a lot about the epochs on Earth and within humanity. So the fallen Martian impulse occurred during Atlantis times. And this was when technology got in the wrong hands and got used and manipulated for the wrong reasons, and then the Great Flood. And the fallen Venusian impulse is associated with the Lemurian times. And you can kind of relate the masculine and feminine there. The Martian, the Mars, masculine. The Venus is the feminine. And if you look at our world today, we're dealing with a lot of these masculine, feminine polarities and dynamics, and toxic stuff coming up to the surface, and healing stuff. I mean, on the other hand, the spiritual community has been doing a ton of healing work around the masculine and the feminine energies, and bringing consciousness to those levels of relationships and relating to each other. And the earth is said to take on a lot of the karma from Mars and Venus. And this goes back to the kind of finding our anchor in ourselves as guardians of this earth, of really staying centered with earth and the mother, as earth is kind of within these auric fields of Mars and Venus. And we're really meant to stand true as these, we want to help be the light during these times in a centeredness, so these energies can transmute into the higher mercurial impulse that is meant to play out.
Hmm. It's a neat thing that you're bringing up with the Venetian or Venus and Mars energies, and that the Mars is taking action. And, a lot of people are looking, particularly in our political candidates, that, oh, they're going to get a lot of stuff done. Doesn't matter who they are, what their character is, they're going to get a lot of stuff done. And the feminine isn't as valued with this in this situation. However, when we think about it, Aquarian, a lot of people say, oh, this is a feminine energy. It's a feminine change. Uh, And as I've read about it, it's like, well, no, it's not about so much feminine change, but the feminine will initiate the change to the higher uh, type of thinking because feminine always initiates, or it always kind of has that leads us to a higher vibration internally, whereas the male initiate it's a starter. It takes action, and it can also take action through our
Sec
past unresolved issues, and it works from that point of view. I'm talking about this more as a shaman
Yes.
with a little bit of a astrological background, uh, but I always see that in the masculine and feminine. The feminine is the greater, higher power within the body, whereas the masculine carries the load and carries our anger or fear or things like that. It works from those energies. To me, I see that a lot happening now with this. And maybe, what do you think of the idea that the Venetian energy is going to get stronger through the year?
Yes, I definitely, well, like we talked about, there's a lot of water going on. So I think there's going to be a lot of healing with the divine feminine that needs
Come
to
closer.
occur.
Yeah, I can't hear you as well. Thank you.
Can you can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
you're better.
Okay. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of healing that's going to occur for the divine feminine in women, but also in men as well. And if you think of 2025, it's also a 9 year, it's a year of completions and wisdom and enlightenment and higher consciousness. And also in tarot, it's associated with the hermit. So when it comes to the 9 year being endings and completions, this could be, and with the water involved, this could be really sitting with some of our emotional water, some of our subconscious programmings that need to be healed and worked through in order before we get to some of that fire energy of motivating and drive and action as well.
Hmm. Kind of like getting centered and cleaned up in
Yes.
the middle of the storm, just kind of what you were saying earlier. We have to go internal,
Mm.
and then we will come out to this to take action.
Yes, and being truthful and kind and compassionate and anchored in your truth and your wisdom will be helpful because 9 is also the completions, and it can bring karma, it can bring, bad karma or good karma, it can bring rewards as well. And if you know that you've been staying true to that, even through some of the emotional turmoil or emotional crisis or emotional rebirths that some of us are going through, there is reward on the other end of it.
Indeed. Yeah. As seems like a little lull, so I want to tell everybody that you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious. My name is Bart Sharp, and our guest today is Maiaya Vale. Uh, and this is Astrological Predictions of 2025. Uh, and you can find Maiaya at www.astrologywithmaya, MAIA.com, Astrology with Maya. And you are on United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7, 105.3 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Also on Roku, X, Facebook, YouTube, and the UPRN talkradio.com website and other internet platforms. So we're on radio, podcasts, cable, and all around the world. Uh, so, um, so we're really covering a lot so far about the first 3 or 4 months of 2025, if I understand correctly. Um,
Yes.
how do you think the rest of the year is going to turn out?
So the second half of the year, I think, is going to be a lot easier for most of us, thankfully.
Mm.
So we're going through like the womb of the cosmic mother, so to speak. And summertime. We are going to have some of that that fire energy preview to give us some motivation after going through some of this emotional catharsis on a collective individual level as well. So that's hopeful. It's we're just getting a preview because there are a few planets that are going to be going retrograde after those few months. And so that towards the end of 2025, we can really, we'll be able to sit with everything that has gone on in our life so far and see what to do with those energies, as these are going to be new cycles for all of us. We're all going through these new cycles. So we're going to need that time after all of the water and that fire to really sit with, and focus and see, okay, where do we want to go forward next with these new cycles, and what is, our highest timeline that can be unfolding, and how can we help and be of service, be those earth guardians, hold our light um, in the center, and be that through humanity, and how are we being affected by humanity, and what can we do um, that we can be of highest service to ourselves and those around us at the time.
Mm. So we're gonna hold things in at the first of the year, and then we're gonna put it out there. So if you're working on projects or you're really afraid that bad things are going to happen in your life, get centered, go
Mhm.
inward, hold your energy, and there'll be a time that you will be guided. Something will wake up.
Yes, that's really beautiful. And when you said that, reminded me of one of the notes that I have down here, and that's let's see if I wrote it down correctly. I'm more of a visual person. And I do like to say that's one of the things that I love most about astrology is whenever anyone's going through a rough patch or a rough cycle in their life, is we can look to the cycle and tell you,
Mm.
okay, this is probably when it's going to end, and you're going to see like a sigh of relief. It gives you a little bit of that foresight to be able to say, okay, like, sometimes people get stuck in depression and think it's never going to end. And it just gives us a little bit of, as astrology is a tool for us to use to work with the energies at hand, and like you said, when to hold stuff in, when the waves are coming in, and when to push things out for an easier process. And like you mentioned with we have a few planets: Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter. And in the sky, they're actually kind of creating a sacred geometric formation. Um, and it's going to look like a roof. So as
Mm.
I interpret this, just naturally looking at it, holding true to our center, if you think of the top of the chart as the very point of alignment, that we're going to be having a higher faith and living in virtue and kindness and compassion. You're going to be protected and sheltered during all of this stuff that's going on in your life or outwardly. And just knowing that and having faith in that is going to be helpful for a lot of people.
Faith is a very powerful energy and vibration uh, in general. And I like the way you ended that statement, because sometimes that's what will bring us through any challenge. Uh, Wonderful. So, any aspects about 25 that you find particularly fascinating and curious that we haven't covered yet? Because I think we're got a lot of stuff in so far, but there's still more to share.
There's
Mm.
there's still more. Well, we have the eclipse cycle, which is a new eclipse cycle that's happening. So eclipses are usually an 18-month cycle, and they're the nodes of the moon. And the nodes of the moon are when the ecliptic of the moon's orbit and the Earth's orbit intersect and create like a little node. And it's the north and the south node in our natal chart. It's represented by a little horseshoe symbol or the headphone symbol, depending on what generation you're in. And I still like the horseshoe. I'm a little bit old school, even though I'm a little bit younger. But Yeah, so those are significant points in our chart because the North Node represents this intense focus of where we're going to be. There's going to be this intense focus in our life, and an increase of. And the South Node is what represents where there's a surrendering or a loss or a letting go or a release. So the eclipses are happening on the axis of Pisces and Virgo. So if you look at your specific natal chart, the Pisces house and the Virgo house is going to be activated for you. And on a collective level, the Pisces Virgo axis is health and work. So, you know, we're going to see changes when it comes to health for the next 18-month cycle of the eclipses and also work. And this is going to be collective health and individual health, as well as our individual work and our collective work
Mm.
for humanity as well.
Hmm. In what I understand about eclipses, of course, they're very intense events. And how would you advise people to, approach an eclipse that's coming up in their lives? I mean, we had a couple of them in Austin in the last 2 years. And when I look at the city of Austin, Texas, it's been just an explosion of creativity and business and all of this stuff happening. Uh, and it's just ironic that the eclipse comes floating right through here. People down by the lake that's in the middle of the town called Town Lake, all with their little eclipse glasses, taking it all in. I went into a very deep meditation and, um, trying to maximize that form of consciousness, almost like it's going to spring me forward into what's next.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. So the eclipses are kind of like a full moon on steroids, and
hey,
it's a lot of energy. So meditating and going within is definitely what I always recommend, for myself and others around eclipses. Now, if your rising sign is Leo or Cancer, that means that your chart ruler is the moon or the sun, that you're going to be even more significantly impacted by lunar or solar eclipses. So those people for sure are a little bit more impacted, but everyone's impacted. And usually eclipses, they come in pairs and they happens twice a year, each pair, and it represents these turning points in our year that, you can feel 3 months out of some of the manifestations on how it unfolds in a person's life. So I don't really recommend manifesting or doing anything too crazy unless there's other significant factors in one's natal chart that do support that. Like you said, it is a time to kind of go within and sit with those energies and feel what is transforming and changing in your life and how to go forward from there.
yeah, yeah. I just see, well, any vibration and energy that's of a higher vibration,
Hmm.
you should try to take it in and understand how the vibrations and frequencies are opening you. This is a meditative process. I do all kinds of wacky stuff like that. Got a close relationship with Venus right now. That's another story. Uh, so it's all good stuff. Um, what are some of the things you're doing to approach 2025 in a bigger way?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm definitely one of those water signs that's getting impacted heavily through this emotional catharsis,
Hmm.
to say the least. So, keeping true to my creative endeavors, I love art and music and taking time out for that, feeling my feelings. It's important. A lot of this stuff is bubbling to the surface. A lot of the water is bubbling to the surface of our subconscious. Meeting that fire is creating the steaminess, and I've been feeling that in my own life and really sitting with that, um, and reflecting and taking time to honor that out and kind of pulling back some of my projects actually, um, and just taking time out for myself because that's just what I personally need to do with what I have going on in my chart. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's curious how we all approach it. And you're approaching it so much from your astrological sign. So Can you give advice on fire, water, and earth signs of maybe what would be just a kind of a strategy? Maybe you're just going to speak from the gut and spitball ideas out there. And I'm throwing probably surprise questions. It's kind of what I do on Becoming Quantum Conscious.
Yeah, I mean, so I would base off of each rising sign are going to be impacted a little bit differently. And like you said, some of the elements, the water elements are going to be impacted most, and the fire as well. Mutable, the Pisces and Virgo, some of the mutable signs. And I think the most important thing that you can do if you look at your natal chart, this is kind of what I do, and this might be going a little bit into it, so if you want a transit reading, reach out to me.
Yeah,
But if you look at your transit chart and wherever you have the most heavily placed planets, most concentrated, that means that there's a high volume energy happening in those specific houses, and each house represents different topics and areas of our life. So when there is a concentrated energy in a specific area of the chart with lots of planets or transits happening, I actually like to look at the opposite side of my chart and focus on those houses and those energies. And that's what I would suggest for other people to do as well.
yeah. That's a great strategy, and also maybe get help if you do not understand those things. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's always a good thing. Uh, yeah, I
I did
just go ahead.
I did want to mention, because you mentioned how you have a beautiful relationship with Venus right now, and we're actually going to have a Venus star point this year in Aries, March 22nd to March
Mm-hmm.
23rd. And this is a beautiful Venus goes into the heart of the sun. She becomes rebirthed and renewed, and it's kind of she kind of rolls out this Venusian red carpet in our life of a rebirth and new beginnings, and that's the Aries part of everyone's charts.
Hmm. Well, that's neat. Just to share, as most people know, I lead tours to southern France, and in the last 10 years, I've been fascinated in kind of the secret symbology of that area. Because if you know anything about France and its relationship with Jesus and Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, there's one story told by the church, and there's the secret stories that are hidden codes and symbols and such. And one of them is the three crescent moons, the three sisters, as they say. But from what I understand, it's those moons represent the sun, Venus, and our own moon. And this is also be Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and uh, the moon itself, which is our individual journey. But the Venus is the divine feminine in all the applications that it can apply infinite concepts into life itself. And that's what Venus is this bountiful feminine energy, at least in my interpretation. Hi, Trevor. Welcome. Go, Amaya. Uh, yeah, so I kind of have a lot of reverence for Venus and the Sun. Call me a pagan. I'm still Catholic. I'm still Catholic in some ways.
I have a similar background. I'm very similar. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. So, how do you see this year ending up going into 2026?
Well, let's see here. I have written down some of the dates for some of the smaller signs. I'm sorry, some of the smaller, faster moving planets like Mercury. So we have a lot of retrogrades happening. So that means that, again, with the water, it's a very internal time. So we're going to have Mercury retrograde in Leo from July to August. Then
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have Mercury retrograde in Scorpio and Sagittarius November 9th through the 29th. And then we have Mars retrograde right now until February 23rd, which is it's retrograde in Cancer and Leo, going back and forth there. Which again, water and fire. You think of Leo, that's fire. Mercury retrograde in November and
Now,
being that's water and fire. So we're working a lot with that.
so I want to ask you about that. You said Mars retrograde in Scorpio. Did I get that correct?
Mars retrograde in Cancer and Leo.
Okay, so you had one in Scorpio.
Mercury retrograde in Scorpio Sagittarius 9,
Oh,
20.
okay. All right. You're having a little bit of feedback issues right now. Um, I'm not for
Okay.
sure what that's about. Um, okay. Uh, how do you feel about Scorpio in general? I mean, that's one of the most controversial signs. I've grew up with a lot of Scorpios, even married one. I still got the scars. So, how do you feel about Scorpio?
Yeah, I had a lot of Scorpios as well, and um, I love Scorpios because they have a, healthy ones have a nice psychological understanding, and they create deep bonds. And,
Okay, we're having a lot of feedback issues with your voice, Maya. Um, so
can you
um,
hear me now?
I can. Whatever you did made it different. So what was about Scorpio? Maybe it's a
So
scorpion stinging
Scorpio,
there.
yeah, it's Um, I love Scorpio, the healthier octave Scorpio, because they have a lot of these deep psychological underpinnings through the things that they've gone through in their life. And they are mergers. They love to create those deep bonds and intimacy. A lot of the times they've been to the so they're not really afraid to meet people there. I think people, it gets the stigma because of the unhealthy octave Scorpio, which can be a lot of that thing like the Scorpion, and taking those psychological understandings and underpinnings and using them as, manipulation tactics or power and control tactics, which I think is where a lot of it's from. But Scorpio is really beautiful and fascinating. Is people who are very much in
Hmm.
investigation and mystical subjects of life.
Boy, my father and my first wife are Scorpios, and uh, God, that's kind of like a synopsis of them combined. Uh, they made me who I am today. Let's just put it that way. And I think that's so much about what we're facing in 2025 because I hear that in so much of people like, oh my God, this shit's about to hit the fan. And it doesn't matter what country you're from, because I know a lot of people in Europe, thanks to my travels to France and meeting people, but that's a growing sentiment there. We have it in the US, and friends in Canada feel the same. Um, but only my friends in Mexico are going, well, everything's kind of groovy down here. I don't know what's going on there. But, you know, I think it's just, we've given some great advice to people and that not to react these first
Mhm,
3 and 4 months, not to overreact, that there's something
mhm.
bigger going on than what you see in front of you.
Yes, there's a bigger plan to it all, and do our best with where we are. And also, like you said, with your friends over in Mexico, it makes a little bit, and this is a whole different branch of astrology, but astrocartography of where the planets have certain, lines. I'm sorry, the geographical locations have certain lines, like a sun line or a moon line or a Mars line. If you're living on a specific line during these times that are going through a lot of shifts, you're likely to feel some of the manifestations of that planet's significations in your life. But if you live somewhere that's more easy,
You're
synergizes beautifully with your astrocartography.
Yeah, that's a great concept. And how would you kind of get that? Where's the right place for you? Because I hear this all the time of people moving and suddenly they made the right call or something. I'm in two places. I'm in France. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I can't decide which one I should stay, or maybe living dual lives is better, you know.
Yes,
But
you can get astrocartography.
oops. So we've been having a little bit of difficulty there. We're talking with Maiaya Vale. Hopefully she'll come back uh, and such. I will start talking about next week as we hopefully will have Maya come back. Um, there's some, and she is coming back right now. Gosh, she is so quick. Welcome back.
You're welcome. Okay, so the astrocartography, you can get an astrocartography reading, and it will show you where your line's at. Living near a sun line or a moon line, people can feel a little bit more at ease, feel nurtured on their moon line. Their sun line, they could feel more vitality. If you live on a Pluto line, you can have a lot of these death and rebirth experiences in transformative, powerful ways, but also in very debilitating ways as well.
Mm.
So astrocartography reading can be helpful to see where you're at. I'm personally on a Chiron line, so this is like I'm working a lot with the Chironic energy of the wounded healer and healing a lot of ancestral and maternal lineage things in my life.
Oh.
That's just an example.
So in other words, in relation to your own astrological chart, it will have well, there'll be different lines related to different planets, and your chart will resonate with some of those lines better than
Correct.
others. Okay. All right. So it's always, you know, Paris, France isn't the best place for everybody to live, but for some people to live because it
Correct.
matches who they are. Okay. Gotcha. Well, do you do astrology or
Yeah, I'm
carto?
open to doing any kind of astrocartography readings. Yeah, I work with people on whatever reading they want to do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and what forms of astrology do you practice and study? So everybody kind of know where you're coming
So
from.
predominantly Hellenistic Western tropical astrology. It's a
Yes.
mouthful.
Okay. Yes, it is. And also you study Vedic astrologies and other forms of astrology.
Yeah, I like to study all of them and kind of like mix them together. Just like religion, I feel every branch of astrology has a truth, and putting them all together gives us a better holistic picture of the story.
Yes, you're a very curious woman, and personally, those are wonderful to be around with that. So we have coming to the end. This is Ash Castor says, if I may ask a question, do you believe in the Fae and or that there's a connection between fairy folklore and astrology astral exploration?
I
Um,
do.
you kind of look like a fairy, by the way. Uh,
I
uh,
love berries.
yeah, so I'll let you field this question.
Yeah, well, I feel like astrology versus astral exploration. I definitely feel like the Fae are interwoven when it comes to the astral and the etheric realm. And for me, a lot of my understandings when it comes to the Fae goes back to Rudolf Steiner and his works. And he talks about how during the Lemurian epoch, um, the realms were just so synced up that we were able to live so freely with the Fae and other magical creatures and creation. And as we got and moved into different epochs, we got a little bit denser, and not everyone is able to still see as clearly. Um, but I know it's still there.
It is, and I explored those areas as well in Southwest France. And when I bring that vibration back to Austin. In other words, once you know the vibration, you can take it anywhere you can go, and maybe to do meditations of the fairy and fae and summing them into your own backyard so that they can create their own gateway to your world. Like my neighborhood in Southwest Austin, they kind of leveled the whole playing field or the land 40 years ago and put up new trees, and it's kind of like a scalped neighborhood, so to speak. That doesn't mean that we can't bring nature back in fairy and fae and create
Mm,
cartography here. We can do that.
that's
What
beautiful.
what a
Yeah, and
great question, Ash.
sorry, go ahead.
What a great question, Ash. And we are coming to the end of the show. We have about 2 minutes. I want to say that you're on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network. Next week we'll have Tina Kenny Clark with summoning and doing activations in Egyptian temples is the basic thing. Maiaya Vale is our guest, and you can find her at www.astrologywithmaiaya.com. Um, do you have about a 1 minute message for us of your wisdom or advice to give to everybody?
I just want to thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast. It's such a blessing to connect with other wonderful, beautiful like minds on this path of seeking soulful evolution. And yeah, my message is to everyone and to myself as well is to just hold true in your center, continue being a kind, compassionate, truthful being in this world, and maintain your innocence and your creativity and feel your feelings, and everything is going to be a-okay. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're all going through these cycles together. No one's ever alone. And if anyone wants to dive a little bit deeper, of course, feel free to reach out. I would love to help.
Thank you so much, Maya. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And hopefully, we'll see you next week. And until then, blessings to all for a great 2025. Bye bye. Thanks, Amaya.
Thank you.